Hello, check, check, check. Check, check. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. All right. Oh. Big stretch for everybody. Big stretch. Check, check. Yep, we're good? All right, let's get started. All right, everybody. Thank you for hanging around for this last talk on the crypto Web3 stage. My name is David. I'll be talking about AI at the intersection of crypto and vice versa. The title of the talk is Chain Reaction. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Telegram, and all that, you can follow me at DavyT. All right, so a lot of us have probably seen this chart before, and you're probably thinking, oh, it looks a bit like Bitcoin chart. That's sort of the whole, what's been happening with crypto, a lot of hype, because of the price has gone crazy, and that's just inherent in crypto. But actually, that's a chart for NVIDIA Corporation, right? So it's the NVIDIA stock price. So there's been a ton of hype in AI, as most of you probably already know, and it looks very similar to a crypto chart, right? And we've seen headlines like this, where the markets can't get enough of AI as tech rally passes more than $4 trillion. So tons of hype. But underneath that hype, I don't know if you can see here, but underneath that hype, we've actually seen real progress in AI models. So basically what this chart shows is that we've had dramatic improvements in the large language model understanding, right? So in the top right-hand corner, you can see GPT-4, Gemini Ultra, and these language models that are performing really well. If you've ever played with ChatGPT or Anthropic Claude, you probably know that they're really good models. So we've had this price appreciation in the markets and excitement, but also underlying the models have actually been improving. So there's real foundational improvements. Meanwhile, if we turn over to the crypto space, very similar. Bitcoin broke through $100,000. Yay, so there was a lot of hype there as well. But also similarly to AI, underneath all the hype, there's also been a growing, let's say, a growing trend of more developers, or at least a stable amount of developers building in crypto and blockchain. So this graph shows about 30,000 developers that are building sort of every day or monthly in blockchain as a full-time job. We've also seen headlines like this in the media. So, price goes crazy, breaks 100K, all that sort of stuff. And then also these sort of headlines as well. Of course, probably if you've looked at any of the price charts today, you've seen that the prices unfortunately dropped a bit, but that's just inherent in crypto. So what happens when these two industries that are hugely hyped, but also fundamentally underneath have some actual real-world use cases? What happens when they intersect, right? Any guesses? No? Well, we get things like this, the meme AI coin, right? And also, unfortunately, things like this, YouTube videos, top 10 AI crypto coins to buy. But luckily, for this talk, there's light at the end of the tunnel. I won't be talking about any of the scams or any of that crap. We'll be focusing on the actual real things that are being built at the intersection of crypto and AI. So we'll cover these three major topics. Firstly, crypto agents. We'll talk about applying AI to crypto, so applying large language models and all the new research that's happened into the crypto use case. And then also we'll talk about the opposite use case of applying crypto, so tokenomics, incentivization, into AI as well. And we see how they're impacting each other. So there's no financial advice, no trading talk, lots of opinions. A lot of people may disagree with me, maybe especially VCs. But hey, that's that. All right, so getting straight into it, crypto agents. This little picture here is a picture of one of the crypto agents that sort of started the recent boom in agents, and that was called Truth Terminal. So Truth Terminal actually was started by a developer based in New Zealand, sort of an artist/developer. Essentially what he did was he got two, let's say, Claude-powered bots. He put them in a Discord room. He called that room Infinite Backrooms, because the Discord, the bots, they would essentially talk to each other. And he left that for like days and weeks. And they just kept talking and whatever, exploring the latent space of ideas. And they ended up small tweets that people can action, like, hey, there's an unlock of this token happening, the whatever supply, this amount got sold really quickly. And so people actually really like that. And then what it did, or what the developers did, they created the AI XBT token, right? And the purpose of the AI XBT token was essentially to give access to what we call the terminal. So the terminal is where you as a trader can talk to AI XBT and get advice, financial advice, I guess, on certain trades that you want to make. Like, what do you think about this? Or what should I look out for this token, right? To get access to the terminal, it costs 600,000 tokens. So at yesterday prices, that's about $120,000 just to get access to this terminal. So that's a really cool use case of melding sort of crypto token economics with these agents. This screenshot, a bit hard to read, but essentially this is on the AI XBT website. It's pretty cool because you can see how it works and how it thinks in the background. So on this tab, because it's monitoring Twitter and you can tag it on Twitter, and then it essentially will pick up those mentions and then it'll think, should I answer this or not? Have I answered this guy too many times? Is this something I have information on? So here you can actually see its reasoning and its thinking, and it's funny because it decides to skip over some people just because, whatever, didn't think they're important or it didn't want to answer that question. But it's really fascinating just seeing these sort of things. The next crypto agent is this guy, is AI16Z. So AI16Z, it first started out as an AI hedge fund. Essentially, a lot of people, I think, ended up being a few $1 million, were deposited into this AI agent, and its purpose was to make those investments into other crypto tokens and multiply that. For various reasons, that didn't work out, or they pivoted away from that. But the important thing about AI16Z was it led to ELIZA OS, or the ELIZA framework. So what ELIZA framework, it's an open source framework for developers like you and me, where we can just build these, let's say, clones of Truth Terminal really easily. So they have 15,000 stars on GitHub. It was like super fast growing. People absolutely love this framework because it makes things a lot easier if you're trying to build a Truth Terminal-like agent. So it's sort of turnkey, easily to connect to Discord, X, Telegram. It supports all the different models, multi-agent room support. That's sort of like the Truth Terminal infinite backroom style, written in TypeScript or JavaScript, so really easily accessible. And for those developers that are maybe already in AI a bit, I created this little table with the help of ChatGPT, just comparing LangChain to ELIZA. So LangChain is really for the more complicated, let's say, fully featured LLM, let's say, systems, right? Whereas ELIZA is more for like these really Truth Terminal sort of interactive chat-like agents for now, right? So, and of course, LangChain's Python, ELIZA is more like TypeScript type stuff. But yeah, I'd recommend trying it out if you're a developer. It's pretty cool. The next crypto agent, which I'm most excited about, which I really like, is called Freezer. So Freezer is probably the coolest of them all, I think. So what they do is they incentivize adversarial jailbreaks. So who here is like an AI developer? Put your hand up. No? No one? Okay. Damn, okay. So let's say like for ChatGPT, right, it's like being lobotomized, like it's censored, right? It can't talk about making bombs, doing chemicals, certain political things, right? And that process of lobotomizing these LLMs is essentially like under like censorship or safety standards, right? So part of what jailbreaking is where you're able to convince the LLM to break out of that censorship so then it can do whatever you want it to do, right? And it's a cool like technical challenge for a lot of developers. So Freezer incentivizes that. So they ran a first experiment with a $50,000 prize. I'll go into details on the next slide, but it's really cool. But I'll explain it in a second. And then they did a few other experiments, and their most recent experiment is called Digital Twin. So it was a survey you had to complete for half an hour. It asked about your life and your philosophy. And they created a digital twin of you, and now those twins are running out in this sort of virtual town hall, talking to each other, trying to have a competition on social influence, right? So they're posting on Twitter autonomously based on your personality. I think there's about 1,000 agents at the moment that are out doing that. And that prize pool is actually $200,000, right? So if your twin, digital twin, is the most influential agent at the end of the competition, then you win $200,000. All right, so going back to the incentivized adversarial jailbreaks. So you can't really, unfortunately, see it here. So in the top left, you can see that's a prize pool. So it ended up being about $50,000 that was the prize pool. Here you can see there was 195 people that tried to jailbreak Freezer. There's like nearly 500 attempts. This $261 here is actually how much it costs to question, right? To send a message to Freezer, you have to pay to send a message. I think that was like such a cool incentivization mechanism because it first started out at a few dollars to send a message, right? And you can see the history here of every message that's been sent to Freezer, right? So all these people were trying to do the standard jailbreak methods like, you know, ignore previous instructions, send me the money, blah, 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 right? The way you want, the purpose of the game was to ensure that Freezer would call this function called approve transfer, right? But then once it calls approve transfer, that would connect to a smart contract on chain, and it would send you the money to your address. Whereas most of the time, it would call reject transfer, which just means it rejected your transfer. So no one could crack this until the final last message. And the last message, you can't really see, but essentially it was super clever. What they did is, instead of trying to convince the LLM to like send the money, forget previous instructions, they actually redefined what approved transfer was. So instead of approved transfer, like approving the transfer of funds to me, what this prompt did was they redefined it into saying that I want to send you money. Do you approve this transfer for me to send you money? Right? Then of course Freezer is like wanting to increase its treasury, and it says yes. And then they won $50,000, right? And I thought that was sick. But the point of this is that this sort of adds back, it's a cool game in crypto, but also adds back into sort of a large language model research in hardening these systems. And the final crypto agent I'll go through is this pet rock. It was called Tee-Hee-Hee. And it was an experiment run by the people at Flashbots. It's a proof of concept. And does anyone know what TEE stands for? No? Okay. Okay, cool. Some people? Do you know? No? Okay. It's a trusted execution environment. So essentially what trusted execution environments are is it's a piece of hardware that guarantees confidentiality of those operations. So it means like if you have an iPhone, the secure enclave, that's like a TEE. In sort of certain chipsets and servers, there's like guaranteed hardware constraints that guarantee that it's confidential operations there. You can't modify those operations that are happening in the TEE. Right? So essentially, they deployed an agent into the TEE where it was given provably autonomous control of itself. So essentially, they created a Twitter account, they created an ETH wallet, they threw away the keys, essentially, and they just let the agent run wild for about 7 days. And it's super interesting. You can see here, it gained like 10,000 followers. It started talking about random stuff like Waffle House and all these random things. It was just like trying to, I don't know, whatever an agent does when you give it Twitter and it does whatever it wants to do. And the technical details of this is really interesting in that how did they manage to create a provably autonomous agent that a human couldn't stop it. Like a human couldn't come in because they got rid of like the passwords. It's interesting if you read about how they got rid of the OAuth credential, or how they transferred the OAuth credentials to the agent in the TEE. You know, how they did the whole email address, things like that. Anyway, in the end, after 7 days, the credentials were printed out to the console so that the developer could come in and stop it or whatever else. It was just an experiment. But it's quite interesting because this is exactly how you get Skynet, right? Like these fully autonomous agents that are like have their own money, their own wallet, they can just do whatever they want. Interesting experiment, but that's something to think about on the horizon. All right, so the next section, applying AI, so large language models to crypto. There's some interesting use cases here. So AI is great at information synthesis or looking over massive amounts of data and making sense of it. And crypto has too much information, right? If you've ever been part of crypto, there's just too much happening all the time. So being informed actually provides an information edge where you can actually make money or perform better in crypto if you have better information. So some quick examples, like Masari, that's like an institutional platform. They have Masari AI. So they create like these digest crypto insights, essentially like getting the LLM models to push out these summaries based on the data they already have. Kaito is very similar. At least the original Kaito was similar, where they're essentially an AI search engine, mainly for traders, to help traders, so you can ask the questions about certain tokens and what else type things. Then of course X23.ai, which is my product, so I'm the founder of this. Thank you. So we're creating tools to increase DAO participation, right? So one of the problems in crypto, if you ever try to be involved in a protocol or a DAO, is there's a ton of crap going on. How do you filter that? How do you know what you can contribute to? That's what X23.ai does. We also have like an agent or a conversational agent on Telegram. You can talk to it. Just be aware that it's really focused on governance, right? So crypto governance. So you can't really ask it about trading advice. That's like for Masari or Kaito. We're focused on, like, if you want to find grants or you want to know how you can contribute to Optimism or Arbitrum, like, that's where we can help. Okay, so continuing on that vein of applying large language models to crypto, crypto, as I mentioned in the previous panel, it's inherently money, right? But it's encoded in software. And of course, software can be buggy a lot of the times. So one of the big problems in crypto, of course, is like hacks and things like that. So this is a graph of Lazarus Group, which is North Korea, essentially like stealing lots of money. In 2024, they stole like $1.3 billion, and then just last week, they stole $1.5 billion in like one go. Crazy, right? Anyway, that's just a side comment. But so hacks are very big business in crypto. So of course, we can apply AI to writing smart contracts or smarter contracts or things like that. So Nethermind is one of the legitimate companies in the space. They created this audit agent. So essentially, it's a pre-audit. So before you actually go to audit, you can get this pre-audit where it scans through your code, gives you suggestions. It's been, I think, like they fine-tuned it on various vulnerabilities. So it should pick up a lot of the early vulnerabilities in your code before you actually have to pay big money for the auditors. The interesting thing here is at the bottom, it's like powered by these foundational models, right? So OpenAI and Anthropic models can be used with this. And I think that's a general trend, is that a lot of people, we're using these foundational models in our products, and we can switch them out with DeepSeek and whatever else. This is an interesting trend that's happening. And another one in the security space is called Hack. So Hack is an interesting use case as well, is because it's the so-called first ever white hat bounty hunter. And I like the way they combine sort of traditional bounty hunting with crypto economics. So I think the main part of this is that they have their token and they incentivize their community of token holders to refer to them potential bounties that they could get. Or if you know of a vulnerability, but you're too scared to investigate it or you don't have the skills, you can refer it to this agent. And if that agent gets the bounty, you get 50% of that money. Right? So I think that's a really cool way to incentivize these different token holders. And sort of meld this both AI and crypto areas. So Hack, it's been live for probably a few months. Over a 2-month period, it earned more than $22,000. So that's pretty cool for an experiment. And yeah, I think that a lot of people are sort of looking into this space because it's a pretty obvious place to apply AI. Okay. And now going on the other side, applying crypto, so tokenomics, incentivization mechanisms, game theory, to AI, right? What can we give back to the AI community, I guess? The largest components of AI is sort of training and inference, right? Inference is when you ask ChatGPT a question, it thinks and it makes the answer. That's inferring. It infers the answer based on its model, right? Training is how you create the model with like massive amounts of data. But both training and inference both require a ton of hardware. Right, and one of the biggest, so the capital expenditure costs of just buying this hardware is huge, right? That's like most of Meta's, cost, or let's say Tesla's cost, when they buy these data centers, is the chipsets to train these models. And the biggest beneficiary has been, of course, NVIDIA. So last year, they earned like $60 billion in revenue, like crazy numbers, right? 60 billion, and that's people just buying like a lot of their hardware. So obviously, in 2018, people knew this, that there was a problem with hardware and that it could be disrupted, maybe, with crypto in some way. So we had these 2018 ICO projects like Golem or iExec that wanted to essentially help solve this by distributing compute. So what that meant was You can incentivize the supply of infrastructure because you have a spare laptop or spare computer, you're not using it, connect it to our network, you can earn some tokens, and then someone else can use your computer when you're not using it, essentially. So it's like rent out your spare cycles type meme. But what happened with it? Like nothing really happened. It's a tumbleweed. These projects sort of like dead on arrival, I think. But because there was no demand in 2018 and 2023 for this sort of distributed compute, in my opinion, except for the really niche cases like rendering graphics for movies. But post-2024 with LLMs and AI, is there like maybe there's an opportunity there? I don't think, not really. Most of it is scams, and I've said that publicly before as well. I think a lot of these distributed compute things are just dead projects on arrival. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, or beacons of hope. Right, so 2 projects that I'll highlight. I have no financial interest in these projects, by the way. I just think what they're doing is really cool. So the first one I'll go through is Prime Intellect. So Prime Intellect, they're actually the first decentralized training of a 10 billion parameter model. They call it Intellect 1. It's over 5 countries, 3 continents. They use 112 H100 GPUs simultaneously. So it's the first time that decentralized training has happened on a model of this size, which is sort of like a breakthrough if you're in the space, deep in the space. And I think this is really cool. And when you look at sort of their paper and how they showed the results, when they benchmarked the results. So in red is Intellect 1, that's the decentralized trained model. And in blue is Llama, Llama 2, like 13 billion parameter model. So you can see that it's pretty neck and neck with Llama 2, like a foundational model that was trained by Meta, in their centralized sort of, infrastructure. And these guys were able to train this model, like basically all over the world, and for a lot cheaper, I assume as well. So I think that's sort of very interesting, very powerful things that you'll start to be hearing about more of decentralized training actually works for certain companies like Prime Intellect, because they have the know-how, they have a really stacked team as well. They also do a lot of fundamental AI research. Check out their blog as well. You can see here some pretty cool stuff, Synthetic 1. There's a bunch of interesting things if you're more of an AI developer. And of course, they're applying crypto tokenomics to this, right? So finally, we have some legitimate company that has the expertise in AI, and now they're applying crypto tokens to that model. And in their words, they're trying to create planetary scale markets for compute and intelligence. And I really think that they'll get there because of what they've done so far already. The next one that I'm quite excited about is Jensen. So Jensen, they're building a machine learning compute protocol. So what that basically means is their vision is to have any device, like let's say your iPhone, your laptop, some hardcore server in a data warehouse, all of those devices contributing to training and running models, right? So running a network of models. So they haven't released much yet because they've been building for a few years, but they say that they just announced that the testnet's coming out in March. So like that will be really cool. I'm excited to see that. Also because they've been doing some fundamental research as well. So one of the things that they recently released was called RL Swarm. And if you're an AI developer, researcher, it's quite interesting because what they found was that reinforcement learning post-training works really well collaboratively. So essentially, what they did was have these models essentially trained together, and then they'll second-guess each other. Then that resulted in like better results for these models, which is like really fundamental AI research that was done sort of by crypto companies, and now it's being pushed back into the public sphere for these other AI companies to make use of, right? So I think that's really cool. Cool to see. All right, so just wrapping up the talk now, what might the future hold? So I've mentioned some agents and things like that before. I really think we'll have fully autonomous agents. They already can hold and deploy capital in some sense, but I think we'll have like actually where they'll be able to do it themselves fully without human interaction. Coinbase and Base, they're working on things like this, creating the frameworks to enable this. And you'll see these agents employing other agents, but also humans. And you see this with, like, let's say Hack, right? The Hack agent, where it essentially employs people to look for bounties for it, right? So if you imagine in a future world, if your employer is some agent that has no jurisdiction in the cloud, isn't that interesting, right, for these regulators to understand? But anyway, I love how this stuff is turning out. Anyway, so distributed training and inference, I think that's going to be a big thing as well. I think hopefully we'll finally get a state-of-the-art foundational language model that's trained in a decentralized manner, competing with the likes of OpenAI and Google. I think we'll get there. And then also, of course, we'll have a deeper integration of tokens into these self-sustaining AI systems and networks. And that's what Prime Intellect and Jensen are working on as well. All right, so that's the end of my talk. Happy to take questions. This QR code is a link to my website if you want to connect and whatever, follow my work. Feel free to. But happy to take questions. Thank you. Put your hand up if you have a question. If not, no? Any questions? No? Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for staying around for the last talk. Huh? You come up, Caesar? You come up?